An old rabbi of mine used to tell this story so much that my mum began to get really frustrated by it. But I haven't told this story yet, and I'm sure my mum will forgive me. A woman who has lived her life in many ways well finds herself in a boat in a storm in serious danger. She has studied much Torah, observed many commandments, and was generally responsible towards her family. So now she figures, is the time for divine recompense. God, I pray, save me, lift me from this boat, from this storm, to dry land. Soon enough, a rescue helicopter appears, but she swats it away, explaining, God will save me, I want God to save me. Soon after that, a rescue boat motors close. But again, God will save me. I want God to save me. But there is no hand from the sky. There's no miraculous flight. There is, though, a life jacket that she, becoming scared and sad, sees suddenly in the boat. And she figures it could save her. She could swim most of the way to shore, maybe all of it. But having begun to stretch out her hand, she withdraws it, saying to herself, I've lived piously. I want God to save me. I deserve it. After her imminent death, she comes face to face with God. Why didn't you save me? She demands. The divine replies, bewildered. I sent a helicopter. I sent a rescue boat. I made sure you had a life jacket. What more could I do? Why did you not save yourself? The first verse that Aaron read has the divine commanding Moses, Psul lacha, carve lacha, for yourself, 2 tablets. And then the verse continues, Aseh lacha Aaron, make for yourself an ark for them. Why are these tablets and that ark emphatically lacha, for yourself? What can we learn from this? Furthermore, there's a discrepancy between the instructions about this ark and the ark that we encountered in Exodus. In Exodus, Bezalel, the master craftsman, makes an ark along with the whole people. But here Moses explains that he was told, Aseh lacha Aaron, make for yourself an ark. So what do we do with this discrepancy as well as the emphatic for yourself? What meaning can we make for ourselves? Ibn Ezra, the 12th century commentator, says it's the same ark, just different versions of the same moment. Rashi, the 11th century French commentator, says we have 2 different arks here. One was to be reserved, held back, exclusively in sacred space. But the one here to be made for yourself could lead the people in their lives as they progressed, even into battle. Now, the Or HaChaim, the 18th century Moroccan commentator, agrees there were 2 different arks. One was for that first set of tablets, which, as Aaron pointed out, involved less human agency. Those first set of tablets that were smashed were carved by God. These tablets, we're told, didn't really need an ark for a while. They hovered between heaven and earth, between the divine and the human, just slightly out of reach, needing no ark until they came crashing down. But the Or HaChaim teaches us that here, when we hear in Deuteronomy, make for yourself an ark for those second tablets, for those commandments that were carved by humans too, these must be tablets that people can relate to. And so they must be homed in a material that is human, that people can relate to, and that gives people access to them. And this is so each person can continue to approach and to own their own Torah, their own Judaism. We learn from the Or HaChaim that we must make our Judaism accessible and that we as Jews must be empowered. We must own our Judaism and our Torah for ourselves. We're also reminded by that emphatic lacha for yourself of the first lacha, the first prominent lacha in the whole Torah. God said to Avram, Lech lecha, you go, or go for yourself. These two words, without vowels as they are in the scroll, are essentially the same word, Lamed Chaf. And so we learn that we find urgency and meaning in tending to ourselves. And we find ourselves in going and acting. God, in that moment with Abraham, insists that there is no divine plan. There is no better world without your agency. Rashi on that verse tells us that for yourself means that Abraham should go for his own benefit. Jewish mission, our mission, begins when you start addressing what you care about. I suppose one could see the biblical grammatical combination of verb plus lacha, for yourself in the single person, as merely ancient idiom. You should do this. But this seems like a boringly passive reading. Let us see in these prominent lachas the invitation to make our Judaism our own, to make it accessible, to make it in part self-made. Let us find the invitation in these lachas to bring agency to our lives. Let us find the invitation to identify our own self-interest, which doesn't mean being selfish, but paying attention to what you care about, to what we each care about, and building your life around it, and teasing out in conversation what someone else cares about as well, so they too can build their life around this. Our Torah, our God, our Judaism keeps on calling out to you, insisting that you, your life, and your benefit matter. We're not to be passive. We're to be partners in creation. The divine once made the world, v'yasechem, and it was so. And so now it's for each of us to make for ourselves a selacha. We're not to surrender our Judaism or our lives to God, or even to community. For God demands our action, and community requires our activeness, and it needs deeply felt personal meaning. A selacha. Make your Judaism for yourself. Own it. It's not a spectator's sport. Learn to do something within it. Learn to bless Torah, or to read Torah, or to lead a service, or to interrogate our texts, to make them your own. Make it for yourself with your hands. Learn to dress and undress the scroll, or to lift it, or to open the ark, or at home light candles, or even lay tefillin. Access your Judaism by asking questions of it that matter to you. Make any teaching here your own by taking the time to think, what could this mean to me? What could I do with this? Don't surrender your Judaism, not to rabbis, not even to wardens, not to God, because God keeps on asking you to own it. It's the only way it works. Lech lecha, go for yourself. Make your life your own. Own it. Know what you care about. Reflect on this. And then make sure to either remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, or do something different. Start acting differently. Don't surrender your sense of happiness or purpose. Your work, your family, your relationships, your life. These must be and can be things that you shape towards happiness and purpose. Don't let them be substitutes. Rabbi Hillel taught us, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, who am I? Both parts of that epigram are important. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Take a story too, and make it your own. And I won't repeat that story of the storm too often, but I hope that you and I will hear the call frequently to save yourself, to do this for yourself, to live a life that matters and is ultimately your own. Shabbat Shalom.